welcome to the first ever Trading Post online gun safety pistol class. We're offering this as a response to the massive influx of new firearm buyers that have never owned a gun before, and we want to provide some instruction, there we go, as to how to own and operate a pistol safely. Just as a free community outreach provided by the Trading Post. This is my first time teaching online, so bear with me. I'm used to a much more interactive audience. We will be answering all questions at the end. So, let's get started. I don't have any ammunition live here in this classroom. You may be able to see my tabletop that I've got some ammunition here called snap caps. Those are safety rounds. Other than that, all firearms are empty for safety. This lesson is adapted from the, you may see the First Steps Pistol Orientation class that we used to offer back when we had our range open. It is a greatly reduced in time format class where I'm going to be trying to keep this to roughly around 40 minutes. Since this is the first, that time may be a little soft. My primary concerns today are going to be safety and the 5 fundamentals of pistol shooting, and I'll explain why as I get to those steps. There is the PDF version of our booklet available for free on our Facebook in the post about this event. Feel free, download that, print it out, fill it out, whatever. Also, if I do go a little too fast, you can always rewind, watch it later. My suggestion is the first time through, just listen. Just follow along, listen. If you do have a training pistol of some sort, go ahead and do your handling exercises on there, and then go back and just rewatch, take notes, and go through the material a few times. Trust me, this isn't something that you're going to pick up the first time through, and it is that important. You have got to know how to use these tools safely. So, the 4 rules of pistol safety that we want to cover today. Number 1 is always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. We'll define a safe direction in whatever direction is the safest. So, because when I used to teach it in classes, I would ask them, what direction is a safe direction? And they would say up. And I would say, that's true, unless you're on the first story of a 2-story building and your kids are upstairs. Then up's not a safe direction. And they would say, oh, okay, well, what about down? Well, it would be unless you're on the 2nd story, and in the 1st story, there's people down there. That's no longer a safe direction. So you have to be aware of your surroundings and just choose a direction that is the safest. Generally, down is safe, but just be aware of your surroundings. That's kind of the big point of that one. Always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. We're going to hit this more when I hit the handling portion, how to hold a pistol while loading and all of that. But the big thing is keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. Number 3, always keep the firearm unloaded until you're ready to use it. And I like to define this for students because they kind of don't think about what using it is. Using it is when it's on your hip, ready for immediate use. Using it is when it's on the nightstand for immediate use. Not using it is when it's in your safe, in between shooting sessions. You use it primarily for target. Then you're not using it. Keep it unloaded, because then when you pull it out, you don't know if it's loaded or not, and that follows into the next one. Always treat a firearm like it is loaded. You don't, when you're holding one, this is made out of rubber. I still don't point it at people. I still don't get careless with it. I keep my finger off the trigger while I'm handling it. You just want to have that respect. You don't normally go around juggling chainsaws even if they're off, okay? So we want to maintain that same level of safety with a pistol. Even a training pistol, it gets you in the habit of keeping it pointed in a safe direction. Now, I'm only going to show the slides for the nomenclature. I'm actually going to try and integrate the nomenclature, the names of the parts, as I go through the 5 fundamentals. That way it kind of sticks with you as we're using it, but these slides are here. That way, as you rewatch this video, pause it right there. There's all the names. You can fill out your chart. And again, we'll be referencing these parts when we get to the handling exercise. Same goes for the semi-automatic. There's all the part names. We'll be talking about most of these, maybe not all, but most of these as we get to the handling exercise. Now, this slide right here is where I'm going to stop. This is going to be one of the main things I want to talk about right now. And then when we get to the 5 fundamentals, we will pick this discussion back up. What are we talking about for loading, cocking, uncocking, and unloading? So, most people have a semi-automatic pistol. Just like this, it's the same type that police officers use, John Wick uses, Deadpool, people like that. This is one of the most standard pistols used now. How we load this is by using a magazine. It is called that because the cartridges are loaded in magazine up and down in the firearm. How do we get them that way? Notice that these are orange tip. These are fake rounds made of plastic. They're actually used to protect your firing pin during dry fire exercises, but they're also great for practicing loading and unloading your magazines. This isn't a skill you just wake up having. When I was teaching most of my students, this portion right here caused them the most trouble as far as practical exercises. So this is something you can practice. Now, if you are at home, you don't have snap caps, then just leave the firearm in the other room, use live rounds, and just practice loading and unloading your magazine, even with live rounds. Just make sure the pistol's not nearby because we don't want a negligent discharge. So you notice there's an orange cap, and then the back of the round has a small cutout. So the orange, that's the bullet. That's the front of the cartridge. You will notice on your magazine that there's a slight slope going upwards. The front of the slope is the front of the magazine. You'll also notice this little cutout on your magazine. That is about the halfway point, but it centers a little bit forward, so that can help you know where the front is. And all we do is we take our cartridge, and you can see the bullet and the front of the magazine are in the same orientation, and we just down and back. The follow-up round is the one that causes people troubles because now it's round, it's not flat anymore. So you use your off thumb to take the pressure off the spring, the back of the cartridge again, down and back. Do this a few thousand times and you get really, really proficient at it with no problems. Now that we've got our cartridges loaded into our magazine, notice those bullets are on the front, not the back. We can take our pistol, and again, use snap caps for this if you're at home. The bullet goes towards the front of the gun. This is called the muzzle. It's the very front of the gun. It's the last point that the bullet touches before it leaves. It's what you point at your target. So, bullet towards the muzzle, and you just load it in until it clicks. Notice it doesn't come out. You can look in the top of my gun here, and you can see the orange tip right here, and that's facing towards the front of the firearm. You now have two ways of loading this cartridge into the chamber, which is this little holding area that you can see here. It has kind of a square profile on my Springfield here. Okay? That's the chamber. The chamber attaches to the barrel. There's two ways to get this in here. You can either A, which is what most people see, is use a pinch grip, pull it back, you heard that little click, and just let go. You don't want to follow it forward because that can lead to a jam. We don't want to jam the gun. This firearm is now loaded and ready to fire. The other way that we can do this is you take your firearm. Again, notice that my finger is off the trigger so that as I'm loading it, pulling the slide back, and manipulating the firearm, I have no danger of it going off without my intent. I can take my other hand. This one's a little more complicated. You lay your thumb all the way along the slide, if you can see that there, and then you wrap your fingers until all your fingertips are also along the slide. Not the frame, but the slide. You will then push with both hands. Notice how there's a gap in my fingers here? That's so that this area doesn't catch my finger when I close it. And I'll push with both hands, listen for the click, and then I just push my offhand towards my opposite shoulder like this. The reason you want your hand to go all the way to your shoulder is so, again, you're not following it forward. One, it increases your chance of getting your hand caught in here, which is quite painful. And two, it will jam up your gun because it doesn't go all the way forward and it gets caught right in there. And you'll notice a problem with that when you're on the range. Okay? So, now that we've loaded around into the chamber, let's talk about how to get it back into this action open position. This one's the tricky part, all right? This is the one that people have trouble with because you have to use both hands at the same time, and as you're holding your gun, it feels awkward at first, but you get used to it. It doesn't take long to get used to it. The key here, the number one thing you gotta remember, keep your finger off the trigger when you're doing this. This is mostly the time when people would have an accidental discharge if you're trying to manipulate the firearm with your finger on that trigger, okay? So, again, I've got it in here. It's ready to go. You can see this is called a slide lock. Generally, it's on the left-hand side of your firearm. Sometimes it's on the right, but most of the time it's on the left for right-handed shooters. And you'll notice a small notch in the slide where it rests. So, how we have to manipulate this is to where this lock goes into that notch. The firearm wants the slide to go back forward, so we have to counteract that by holding it back. How do we do that? So, I'm going to hold it like I'm going to shoot, and I'm going to push back with my offhand. Then, with my main hand thumb, I'm going to push the slide lock forward, okay? And lock it like that. Again, the slide lock goes in the notch on the slide. When the firearm's empty, it wants to do this automatically, but when there's rounds in here, you have to do it manually. The importance of being able to do this is for when you have problems, whether it be a stovepipe, which is when a round gets stuck like that, failure to feed, which is where it looks like two are trying to go in there, or none, or it's kind of cockeyed. Also, what's called a squib load. I don't have time to talk about those today, but given the names, you can go Google it. You're already online. Just open a new tab. Try it out. Squib load is S-Q-U-I-B.
They're in our manual.
And they are also in our manual, fully explained near the end. Near the end of the manual, it's you'll see pages where it looks like a female shooter holding a rifle. And all the steps on how to clear those stoppages are on those pages. So, now we've talked about how to load the magazine, insert it into the firearm, load it, unload it, lock it open. Now, how do you get the magazine back out? Magazine release, again, generally on the left-hand side of the firearm, and it's just a little button. You press it, and it releases the magazine. When it's pointed towards the ground, it just falls right out. Slightly different is the revolver. Okay? Used by police forces for many years, still a favorite of many shooters for its simplicity and its reliability. The only difference on this is a double action revolver. I don't have time for a single action right now. If you do have questions, you can always come out to the trading post and we will try to help you as much as we can. You can also YouTube it, Google it, etc. On a double action revolver, you have a cylinder release. Again, generally on the left-hand side. If it's a large revolver, a large frame revolver and a heavy caliber, there may be two of these, one on each side. All you do is figure out which way the button wants to be pressed. On this firearm, it's towards the frame of the gun, some are towards the muzzle, some are towards the rear of the firearm, and some are towards the bottom of the gun. This one happens to go in towards the frame. Then all you do is take two fingers, push that out. Now I'm holding it in my offhand, leaving my main hand ready to load. And you just tip it down to load it up. I don't have any of the snap caps with me. I'm not going to put live rounds in this firearm, so you'll just have to pretend with me. You load it in and simply shut it, give it a little twist so it's locked in, and you're ready to go. How to unload it? Almost the exact same. You press the release, two fingers. Instead of flipping it forward, you flip it to the rear and push your ejector. And then you can flip it around, load it up, and again, you're ready to go. We're actually going to skip talking about the various types of ammunition, plus Ps, non-plus Ps, and all that kind of thing, just again due to time. So the only thing I'm going to hit on this really is one, know what caliber your firearm shoots. It is listed on the gun, in the owner's manual. You can Google it based on the model number, not just the make, but the model number. And if all else fails, action open, unloaded, you can bring it into a firearm store and they'll be able to assist you with that. Now, there's our malfunctions.
You can show them what happens with that squib load, where if something does malfunction, how bad things happen to the gun.
So the squib load that I mentioned earlier results in a blockage in the barrel that, if not dealt with, can cause catastrophic failure of the firearm, as you can see in the slide behind me. The revolver, it got stuck near the end, and the semi-auto, it got stuck kind of right in the middle, you can tell, and you can see the parts that are blown out from that. So you do want to familiarize yourself with these stoppages and how to clear them safely.
And then that hang fire, you might want to briefly cover that and why.
Did you hear the click? 2 clicks. He's going to look down the barrel to see what's wrong, because that's the best option. Now what happened there is it's called a hang fire. A hang fire hangs out before it fires. So you heard that he was shooting fine, everything was going well, he was having a good day at the range, and then it went click. He knew it was loaded, but it went click. So he tried it again. Usually that's a safe bet. You can just get rid of the bad round, put a new one in, and continue firing, but it clicked again. Something was obviously wrong. Now, reading your manual, looking down the barrel, is not how you clear a malfunction. Ever. Don't do it. He got lucky. It was actually the recoil of the firearm going off that saved his life. If you noticed when it slowed down that it shifted slightly out, that's what saved his life and allowed that video to be on YouTube. Pistols don't recoil like that, and don't trust to that to save your life. When we had our range, we did have people try this where they looked down the barrel to see what the malfunction was. We kicked them out and said you have to take a class. All right? That's a hang fire. Hang fires are dangerous because you don't know if it's a dud or a hang fire. The only difference is a hang fire goes off and a dud doesn't. The problem is you don't know which one it is until it happens. So, read the manual, give it 30 seconds, and then move on from there. Please, again, I stress, read the manual on how to clear these.
Point it in a safe direction.
Always in a safe direction. That's one of our safety rules. So, let's talk about the 5 fundamentals. This is where I want to spend the bulk of our time, and the reason is, when talking about safety, you have got to know how to handle the firearm. If you don't even know how to shoot it on a range, then you're not going to be safe with it. Along with being able to load, unload, cock, and decock your firearm, you have to be able to know how to shoot it safely on a range or in any other situation. Otherwise, that's not going to be very safe. I always tell people, why do we talk about marksmanship in a safety class? Because if even you don't know where the bullet is going, that doesn't sound like a safe situation to me. We're going to talk about how to aim with a firearm, then we're going to move on to trigger control, breath control, hold control, and follow through. Hold control is where we actually learn how to grip the pistol. So, the first thing we want to talk about is actually how to aim a firearm. There are 2 sights on your firearm. A rear sight, which is in the rear, and a front sight, which is in the front, on the slide. Again, this slide's this big heavy piece of metal up top. All you do, and it's really simple. Mine has dots. I doubt you can see it, but there's 1, 2, 3. And you just line up those 3 dots in a perfectly straight line, all lined up, squared perfectly. That's all there is to it. There's nothing mysterious about aiming. But this is where problems happen with accuracy downrange. Where you're just slightly off in your sights, you miss the target completely. Because if you think about it, it's just an angle. If you're off by 1 degree, take that out to 30 yards, and that's going to be a considerable degree of inaccuracy. You want to practice that over and over of being able to line up your firearm perfectly straight. Okay? Now, what we want to talk about here What are you looking at when you look down the sights? Your eye can only focus on one object in focus at a time. The other two are going to be blurry. And how do you line up the sights with the target? There's two things going on. It's called sight alignment and sight picture. Sight alignment is just making sure this straight line is the same as the straight line between your eye and the target. All you're doing is lining up those two lines. That's it. That's all there is to it. So now that I've got a straight line down my sights, pointed at my target, what am I actually looking at? You want your focus to be on the front sight. So while I'm aiming down, I'm looking at my target. My front sight is crystal clear. My rear sight's a little blurry, and my target's a little blurry. There's a reason for this. The target doesn't tell you anything about where you're aiming your gun. If the camera were my target, my eyes are completely on target right now. I doubt I'm ever going to hit it. The rear sight tells you less information than the front sight about where the gun is aiming. Illustration is, if I want to aim up, it goes here. If I want to aim down, it goes here, left, and right. You notice that this point didn't actually move. It shifted around and kind of changed a little bit, but it's not actually moving. But if you look at the front sight, look how much movement is in there. You can see how much information is contained in the front sight in relation to where your firearm is actually pointing. So you want to keep your focus on the front sight and keep it in relation to the rear, all three dots lined up, and then you superimpose that over onto your target, perfectly straight, and that is now your sight picture. You want the front sight right on the center of the target if you're a center hold firearm, or if you've got a target pistol. A lot of those are 6 o'clock hold, like behind me, where the target rests right on top of the sight. That way you're never taking your eye directly off the bullseye. You'll have to know which one your gun is. Mostly target pistols are going to be more of a 6 o'clock hold. The rest of the pistol world is going to be a center hold. We'll move right along to trigger control. This is another one that trips people up more than almost anything in all of the gun world. You've heard it said in movies, you don't pull the trigger, you squeeze it. But they don't really tell you what that actually means, because what difference is there when you're right here? So let's talk about finger placement and what does it actually mean to squeeze instead of pull. I like to think of it as if you were graphing how much force was on the trigger as you're manipulating the firearm. When you go to shoot a firearm, the trigger has a certain amount of space that it'll move, which you can see, before it does anything. You can see it moves just a little bit. This is called trigger travel. So, you can take up trigger travel before you actually fire. That just gets you ready to shoot. On this firearm, the Springfield XDS-9, it also releases this safety that you can see right there. When you're in this position, now what you want to do, so you've taken up the slack, now you want to squeeze the trigger rearward. You don't pull the trigger, you want to squeeze the trigger. Verifying that it is, again, unloaded physically, and you can look. You'll watch. What you want is a nice, gentle... Oh, this one may have a safety that won't fire without being loaded. I don't try to shoot my gun unloaded very often. It's got a snap cap inside. Again, these are plastic rounds, just used for handling exercises. So, you can see right here, pull it back, listen for the click. Why's my gun not firing? There it goes. I can't do it this way.
There's the revolver if you need it.
Yeah. So, again, we've got snap caps in here. Oh, I know why, Richard. Grip safety.
Oh.
I was holding it without the grip safety. There is a grip safety on this gun to make sure you're holding the gun like you're supposed to and not like you're demonstrating a safety class. So, now that the grip safety is off, watch this and listen for the click. Now, that click is the firing pin activating the primer and then firing the shot. Obviously, nothing happened because it's a snap cap. The snap meaning that it did go off. Now, I was talking about squeezing. So, with this, you saw that it was a gentle rearward pressure going all the way to the rear. The other way people fire these is more like in a John Wayne movie. I'll use my plastic one so I can illustrate this process, and it's easier to see. John Wayne tends to push the rounds down range. He shoots a lot like this. I watched it. It was hilarious after someone told me about it. I'd never noticed before. It just helps give it that extra little oomph to bypass armor if they were wearing it. Now, when you're doing this, your finger is also in this method. You're slapping the trigger to the rear of the firearm. You're introducing a lot of movement in the gun that doesn't have to be there. So when you pull the trigger, the whole gun is shifting more or less left and right. Some of it's up and down, but most of it's a left and right movement. And that's going to destroy your accuracy. You can notice people that have this problem because their shot pattern may be good, a circle is good, but it's big, it's wide. We don't want that. We want a small, tight little group, right? That's the idea. So instead of slapping it, you just real gradual do this. Going back to the graph example, take up the slack, fire the shot. You want hills, not mountains. Okay? Nice and easy. The surprise break, that's the last one on this slide. That is one of the most important parts about trigger control. I haven't gotten to where your finger placement is. That's the next slide. The surprise break means that when you've got it up, you're pointed on target, you take your finger, put it in the trigger guard, onto your trigger, you pull up the slack, and then you squeeze until it fires. You don't know exactly when it's going to fire. You have a really good idea. But since you're gently squeezing that trigger, you're not exactly sure when it's going to break. That's when the trigger drops over the hammer or the sear, and then the hammer drops, firing the round. You don't know when that break's going to happen. There's a benefit to this. If you watch people that shoot, when they get to an empty magazine or something happens, I've watched it 1,000 times. They're up, bang, 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 and then it goes click. Why did the gun move? It went click. The reason is they know the gun's going like this, so they're fighting it before the shot goes off, throwing your accuracy way off, generally down. Some people are up. Some people actually give in before the shot goes off. That is called recoil anticipation. The surprise break will cure you of that and illustrate its importance. If you just practice the surprise break, you're going to be amazed at how much your accuracy increases once you're aware of that and the effect it has on your target. Now let's talk about where the trigger actually goes. So we have a trigger here. Does it go on the very tip of your finger? Does it go in the middle pad or more close to the joint? As you can see here, what happens is if it's too close to the joint, then it actually pulls the firearm to your outside. So if you're right-handed, it's to the right because your finger's curling as you're squeezing the trigger. If it's on the tip, it pushes the gun towards the inside and away from where you want it to go. Either way. You want it right in the middle. That way it comes back in a perfectly straight line. That's the idea. You can see on the slide here the targets that they represent, showing you what kind of shot group to expect if you have that particular problem. I see it a lot, either left or right. Just something to keep in mind. Next thing we want to talk about is how to breathe. You thought you knew how? Well, you're close, but not quite on. Body movement of any sort, moving around, doing jumping jacks. When you watch your police show, they run up 60 flights of stairs, and then they pull their gun and they hit the bullseye 20 yards down in this big apartment building, and they hit, a target this big. Not exactly realistic, I know. But breathing affects your shot more than what people give it credit for. So, if you were panting, you can see the firearm moving. That's obviously exaggerated. Notice what direction it moved. So, having your trigger finger off pushes it to the inside or the outside, and recoil anticipation moved it up or down, but up or down, either way. Breathing makes an oval. as you breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. All of this you can tell when you look at your target. So you don't keep targets just to feel good about yourself. You actually use those to read what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong when you go out to shoot. And it allows you to prepare better for the next time you go out to shoot and to improve your skills as you learn the way of the firearm. Now, how do you stop this problem with your breathing? One, calm down. A lot of shooters, new shooters especially, tend to get nervous or excited when they're firing a gun. And that's to be expected. It makes a loud noise. There's recoil involved. These are dangerous items if used improperly. Not if you follow those safety rules I gave you earlier, but if used improperly, they can be quite dangerous. So people get excited, they get nervous, and that can cause rapid breathing. It can cause an increased heart rate. You can get fidgety hands. You can kind of dance around a little bit. I've seen all these on the range. So first off, calm down. Just chill a little bit. How can you help prepare for that? One, get a practice firearm, like this rubber one here, and just practice in your home, holding it, carrying it, put it in your pocket, get a holster for it, whatever you need to do. That way you're more used to having this tool around. Again, this is rubber, so there's no danger in that. The other thing you can practice if you don't have one of those, these are like $10 on Amazon, so they're not expensive, is you can use your real one. Again, unload it, empty. You can even take the magazine out, check your chamber to make sure that there's nothing in the chamber. And then you can also use this, unload it, and you can practice drawing on this one as well. We're going to talk about that when we get to hold control and how that affects in your stance. But you can practice with this just to get used to the weight of the firearm in your hand. Again, always practicing these safety measures. You can see my fingers off the trigger. I practice this every time I pick up a gun-shaped object, whether real, fake, revolver, semi-auto, rifle, shotgun, it doesn't matter. You always pick it up with your finger off the trigger, lying alongside the frame. You'll see this all throughout this video, okay? It actually takes a conscious effort to pick a gun up with my finger on the trigger now because I've trained like this for so long. So, calm down, calm your movement down. Just take a deep breath and let it out slowly. Now, the goal here is, you may be able to see that squiggly line at the bottom. What it's saying is, you just pause for a second on the exhale. You don't cut it off with a knife. You just want to draw it out to where you just stop for a second, and that's when you're going to finish squeezing the trigger. So you're going to get it close, you're going to stop, pause that breath, draw it out a little bit, and then continue with the squeeze until it surprises you when it goes off, and then you can resume your normal breathing. There are benefits to this. Again, proof will be on your paper if you don't take my word for it, okay? Now, let's talk about how to actually hold a firearm. I'm going to use this one because the bright colors make it easier for you to see on film. First off, you're going to take your non-dominant hand, for me it's my left, and pick it up in what I call a monkey grip, because you're going to hand it to yourself. You don't have to do this every time. This is just showing you how to get your hands in the proper position. Then you're going to take your primary hand and just hold it out just like that in a nice L. No problem. You're going to take the curved part of your hand on your palm and put it as far up into this beaver tail as possible. Some guns have less of a beaver tail. You see this one's got a fairly pronounced one, but like this revolver has almost none. But it's still got a space there that you can see, and therefore you can index your hand to that space. So you've got it in a monkey grip all the way up. You can see I can still do this with the revolver, no problem. All the way up at this point. Okay? Now, all you do is take your pinky finger, ring finger, and middle finger and wrap those around the grip, touching the trigger guard. Your index finger will then lay alongside the frame, as I've said. That way, it's off the trigger. You can see right through there, and it is, again, safe to handle. Your thumb lies straight along the grip, pointing down the muzzle. You can now let go with your offhand. So now we've got our thumb pointed straight down, 3 fingers touching the trigger guard, finger in a safe position. Take your other hand, make the same shape, the L. You're going to take this hand and put it all the way up against the trigger guard. Now, all you gotta do is take your palm and touch it to your palm, just like that. And then curl your 4 fingers around, and your thumb goes straight. So now you've got these 4 fingers touching the trigger guard here. You've got these 3 fingers underneath touching the trigger guard, so it's nice and tight. Your hand is high up in that beaver tail as possible. Both of your thumbs pointed straight down the barrel. Index finger in a safe position. This is only slightly different on a revolver. You're again going to take your hand up on the beaver tail. 1, 2, 3 underneath that trigger guard, finger on the frame. That's all the exact same. This thumb is going to lie straight for a moment. I'll show you what the difference is. Take your other hand, again in that L, all the way up against the trigger guard. Touch your palms together. Curl the fingers again. And this time, you're going to lock your thumbs down. Notice how my offhand thumb locks my primary hand thumb. The reason for this is that revolvers tend to recoil upward more than back. A semi-auto, like this one, has this big slide. Every time you fire, the slide goes all the way back and all the way forward, which gives you more of this and this, so your thumbs are straight to help keep it straight on target, whereas the revolver doesn't have that slide, so most of your recoil is up with only a little bit back, so you lock it down onto target. Keeps it nice and easy to remember that way. Also part of hold control is going to be your stance. In this format, I don't really have a lot of room to show you my feet, but it's pretty simple. Your feet are shoulder width apart, nice and easy. You can do this day after day. That's one of the big parts about stance. You can do this repeatable, day after day after day. You can get into the exact same stance. If you try to go into like your flamingo shooting stance, you might have trouble getting it aligned perfectly the next time you go out to shoot, and every little thing you change makes you less accurate in the end. So, feet shoulder width apart, knees are slightly bent. You just want it comfortable and relaxed. If you're having trouble a little bit, throw your butt towards the back, and it kind of gives you a nice built-in shock absorber all through your lower body. And easy from there, again, 3 fingers, 1 on the frame, thumb straight, other hand goes up, curl, thumb straight, and then the gun comes straight out. Notice my elbows are straight, there's no curves in here, and my shoulders are rolled forward, not back. I want them rolled forward. The other thing to remember is that you want the gun to come up to your face, not the other way around. I see a lot of times where people hold the gun out like this and then crane their neck forward. 1, this is really uncomfortable. Number 2 is you can't repeat how far forward your neck is. Every little change makes you less accurate. So instead of going like that, just bring the gun up a little bit. As you do this, time and time again, over and over, you'll get used to this and it'll become second nature to you. Now, you can practice this again at home.
The failure points with that real quick is leaning back too far.
Oh, yeah.
That may be one you want to address.
So, another one, strangely enough, it's particularly women that do this. I've seen it a bunch of times. I've taught just shy of 300 students throughout my classes. Women do this a lot, and I'm not sure why. When you go to aim up, notice my shoulders are forward, elbows are straight, but then they do this. Instead of putting the butt towards the back, they put it towards the front. And so they're kind of leaning like this. It's a very unstable platform because as it recoils, your whole body's out of balance. I see this a lot. Instead, put your butt towards the back, shoulders forward, elbows straight. That's something to keep in mind. And as I said, as you do this over and over, it becomes second nature. You can practice this in your home. You don't even need a firearm to do it. An ink pen will suffice just as well. Just hold it as if it were a gun and practice the exact same thing. It works.
Our book has some really good pictures and illustrations.
Yes, our book has, we actually got a lady in to take some pictures with us, and we were able to illustrate this point perfectly. It's all in the book. Please take a look on page 18 to 20. Should cover most of that. Now, this is talking about stance. Consistency. Remember how I said every little thing throws your shot off? That's exactly true in every way. If you hold it a little different, if you stand a little different, if you use a different type of ammo where you were using an 117 grain, now you're at a 154. Those are different weights of bullets. All of that will throw your accuracy off. And it's discouraging to a new shooter because they don't necessarily understand why they're less accurate on Wednesday when on Monday they were getting nothing but the black inner circle. And they don't understand why. Consistency is the key. In fact, in the beginning, consistency is more important than accuracy. Here's why. If you just show up and you hit the bullseye out, and then the next time you come out you can't even hit the paper, I don't know what to fix. There's probably so much wrong with what you're doing that there's not one thing I can say, there's your problem. But if you come out on Monday and you're shooting to the left by 2 inches at 20 yards, and then you come out on Wednesday and you're shooting to the left 2 inches at 20 yards, well, I know exactly what the problem is. For those following at home, what's the problem? Well, I didn't quite hear you, so I'll tell you. If you're right-hand dominant, you're putting your finger, the trigger, way over here on your finger. Again, pushing it to the left if you're right-handed. Just reverse that if you're left-handed. So being consistent and getting consistent shot groups is more important than knocking the bullseye out every time. In fact, if you're knocking the bullseye out every time, you're not effectively practicing. You're showing off and it looks good, and it's nice to hang that on the wall and tell all your friends you did it at 1,000 yards with a .22 long rifle, but it's not really helping you become a better shooter. You want targets that have a bit of a spread so that you can read what's going on. All right? Now, the next thing is balance, and this is what I went back to on your stance. It has to be repeatable, it has to be comfortable, it has to give you balance and support. That's why, especially for new shooters, I don't really care for an 80-20 where you put most of your weight on the front foot, a little bit on the rear. It's just hard to balance that, especially when you've got so many other things on your mind when you're first learning how to shoot. You want it to be balanced, 50-50, easy, support to where your whole body is supporting you and you're not just off to one side or something like that. I'm actually going to skip the natural point of aim for right now. Please feel free, look it up. It actually is very important to understanding how to be a better shooter and how to adjust your stance, fine-tune it to that last degree of accuracy. Now, follow through. Just like with any kind of sport, you want a good follow through. Let's say you're in boxing and you go to throw a punch and you just stop right when you touch the nose. Well, you're not delivering a lot of force there. You're actually pulling your punch a lot shorter. You want to aim with follow through to the back of the head. That's kind of the general aiming point. When throwing a football, you don't get it to here and then just stop. You go all the way through, just like in golf, baseball, etc. With firearms, it's just slightly different. How it looks, again, unloaded, visual, and physical check. It is unloaded. When you take the shot, okay, hold it for just a second. My finger just stays back for just a split second. The reason is, if you try to rapid fire early on, you're going to be pulling your finger off that trigger before the shot goes off. And it's going to introduce a lot of wobble in your shooting. So you want to bring your finger back, it goes bang, you wait a second, reset the trigger, and go back and forth. The other thing you want to do on the trigger is when you go to reset the trigger, which is just pulling it forward enough that it'll fire again, you'll hear a little click. You only want your finger to move just past that click point. You don't have to take your finger and hit the trigger guard. The reason is, again, you're introducing a lot of movement that's completely unnecessary. And we're trying to eliminate as much of that as possible because if you remember from breath control, movement affects your shot consistency. Squeeze the trigger again if you need to fire again. Do not immediately release and jerk that trigger back again.
Well, not pulling that trigger back all the way can also introduce...
That is true. So if you pull it just where it fires and not all the way to the rear of the firearm, again, you're in kind of a floating state. It's not consistent. So you want to pull it all the way to the rear.
It also causes a misfire.
Yeah, it can also cause malfunction issues as far as the action of the firearm is concerned because it's not catching all the way. And I've had that on a couple of guns where if you didn't get it all the way back, it wouldn't work quite right. There were problems involved. Oh, the thing I did forget to mention on hold control is make sure your wrist is a 2x4. It doesn't move. It is locked. It is solid. This is a straight extension. If you've got loosey-goosey wrists, it can cause your gun to jam. It's actually one of the most commonly reported malfunctions in your tiny little 380s is that it jams every shot. But when you give it to somebody else and it never jams, and then you give it back to that person and it jams every shot, it tells you, it's called limp wristing it. It's letting the gun flop around on their wrist and it loses the energy it needs to cycle the slide. So you want that as a 2x4. In review,
You may want to talk about locked arms
I did.
and shooting a heavy gun.
Oh, for heavy. Yeah.
Because
So
if you're shooting at 357,
again, with your elbows straight, you notice it's a straight line. The reason you want this, for one, is when you shoot a heavier caliber firearm, even if it's something a 45, something most people wouldn't consider that heavy, bending introduces this movement. You want your arm straight. That way, when it recoils, it goes up instead, because it's all going to transfer to here, and it keeps you from hitting yourself in the face. That's about the best way to prepare for something like that you've never done before. If you've never shot anything other than the gun you own, just keep that in mind. That way it recoils up. Otherwise, hop on YouTube and check out gun shooting fails. They're funny. So what are they again? Aiming, trigger control, breath control, hold control, and follow through. Of these, the two most important, if you want to just stop watching the video after this and all you remember is this, the two most important: aiming, to make sure the gun's pointing in the right direction, and trigger control. Master those two first. Otherwise, you'll be introducing bad habits into your shooting form that you're going to have a lot of trouble taking care of. Hold control, you got to make sure you're holding the pistol right, but as far as your stance goes, even if you have a sloppy stance, your trigger control and aiming is going to do a lot for your accuracy. That you can then fix in your stance. Same with breath control. Let's say you're breathing, your target is just going to have the holes like this instead of a circle. You want it to be a circle. Follow through means you won't notice follow through on your first shot, obviously, but on your second, third, fourth, and fifth shot, you will. And how do you find this out? Because if I shot a gun like this, notice it's open, and I went, boom, where'd I hit? Okay, now I've completely broken my stance. I've broken everything I spent time to set up so that I can stare at a piece of paper that's not going to change from now until my next shot. It's not going to change, it's not going anywhere, and it's not going to run away. Obviously, I'm talking about target shooting. So, boom, where'd I hit? I broke it. Now I can't really talk about follow through because now I'm resetting up the shot, I'm resetting up my stance, I'm resetting everything up like this. You will notice my hips are out of alignment because I have to stand quartered so you can see the TV, but normally my hips would be facing directly towards the target. So when I go boom, I don't want to look at the target. I'm still looking at my front sight. I'm not looking at the target. Boom. I'm looking at my front sight, not the target. Boom. Looking at the front sight, not the target. Boom. Okay, I'm out of ammunition. Finger safe. Draw it back, and now I can look. I'm out of ammo, so I have to reload anyway. Now's the time you look. You'll notice that your shot groups become a lot more consistent when you practice it this way instead of essentially one-shot groups. You want groups of between 3 and 5 shots before you stop and assess your target. Okay? So, aiming, trigger control, breath control, hold control, and follow through are the 5 ways to be an expert marksman. And the 4 safety rules: always keep a gun pointing in a safe direction. Always keep your finger off the trigger until ready to shoot. Always treat every firearm as if it were loaded. I just blanked on the 4th one.
I think you skipped one.
I did skip. I skipped number 3 specifically. Always keep a firearm unloaded until you're ready to use it. Those are the 4 safety rules and the 5 fundamentals. Again, look at our book, check it out, digest that information, fill in the blanks, take notes. If you just take this, if you just listen to my voice for however long it's been, and that's it, you're going to forget most of it. You want to write it down. That brings your retention level to, it's like, oh gosh, I think it's 67% when you write it down. And if you actually go and practice it, you get into the high 80s. That you actually remember what you've learned here today. That's the next point. Get on the range, wherever that happens to be. If it's grandma's house out in the county, if it's an actual shooting range, I know right now that may be difficult given all of the travel bans and all that kind of stuff, but as soon as you can, get on a range, practice these skills with live ammunition to hammer in these details that you're just going to forget if you just sit here and listen. You don't want to wait until it's necessary for you to fire a gun, for you to all of a sudden think, man, I wish I would have practiced in the meantime. Just like you wouldn't wait until the end of the world to make sure you have toilet paper. That would be a bad idea.
So I've never owned a firearm.
Uh-huh.
So what do you recommend?
That's actually a fantastic question. I've never owned a gun before. I've never even wanted one before, but now I really feel like I should get one. Pretty much my number one suggestion is go with a mid-size firearm in 22 long rifle or 9mm. The mid-size gives you plenty to hold on to. It keeps the recoil down. It's not as scary when it goes off. Going to a 9 is what I consider as a benchmark caliber. It's kind of right in the middle. You can pretty much gauge how a gun's going to fire based on your experience with a 9. If you've never shot a gun before, I can't tell you what recoil is. You have no reference point of recoil. 9 is kind of right in the middle. If you start with 22, that's a fantastic way to start training. 22 is not considered a defensive caliber, not because it won't cause injury, but rather because what's called rimfire ammunition is less reliable than centerfire ammunition. 22 is the only rimfire that you're going to run into in a normal firearm transaction, whereas everything else is centerfire. But the reason they make it rimfire is for cost savings. A 22 round costs 6 cents a piece, whereas say a 9mm one is going to cost like 17.
What if I just want the gun, but I don't really want to go practicing with it? I just want to have it around the house. What would you recommend?
Okay, so if you want to just have it sit around the house, you're not really looking to practice, or as I hear a lot, I don't actually want to shoot anybody, so I'll probably aim for their knee or their elbow. I suggest you find something else. Whether that be pepper spray, a baseball bat, a stun gun, a taser, a paintball marker, whatever you choose, don't choose a firearm. Don't do it. You have to know, you have to be able to make the decision that you are going to use it for its intended purpose when you need it. Otherwise, what's the downside? Okay, so I don't really want to shoot a bad guy. Obviously, nobody wants to shoot somebody. That's just a fact of life. You don't want to have to shoot somebody. Guy's breaking in my house, though. I don't know what he's going to do to my kids. That's the idea. So he is an aggressor. He's obviously an aggressor. He's not interested in leaving. So you have to take steps to stop that. A firearm is a tool of last resort. That means that when he breaks in, your immediate idea isn't to blow him away. It's actually to try and see if there's a way to get him out of here otherwise.
And you mentioned in use.
Yeah. So
what is in use and safety? And
well, let me answer that one, and then I'll get to that one. So what you want to look at is if I own a firearm and I'm not willing to use it, and I pull this thing out and I go to shoot him in the knee and I miss, because the knee is only this big. I'm not that good of a marksman in the dark, for sure. And you miss. Now he is upon you, and you've not taken the steps to train yourself. He's now got a firearm, and he's in your home, and you, by choosing to pull out a firearm, have escalated this to lethal force. That is a choice you made by pulling out a firearm, and now he has escalated to lethal force. You can see it made the entire situation much worse for you and your family and anybody else he decides to go visit that night. That's the idea. That's the thought process behind choose something else. Okay? Now, as far as what Richard asked, he said, what is in use? How does that work? What does that mean and the implications thereof? People that are carrying a firearm on their side have that as a tool in case something happens that is escalated to lethal force being authorized. So, I'm walking around in Walmart, and a guy with a mask comes in with a 12-gauge hunting rifle and decides to hold the store up. What's my first response? It's not to tackle him, it's to get out of there. My primary idea is to just get out of Dodge. I know where the exits are, they're well marked. I'm just trying to leave. It's worth it to my family for me to leave. I don't have the training and I don't have the proper equipment to be a first responder. And that's just the short of it. I am trying to leave. Me and my family are trying to leave. Okay, so, but the tool is there as a tool of last resort. So after, okay, all the exits are blocked, he's got my wife, whatever. Now I have to resort to, if I deem it necessary, this is all situational, so it's hard to answer. If I deem it necessary, the firearm is the answer. Then you can see how easily in use was on my hip as a tool of last resort. How does this translate to your home? In your home, if this is locked in a safe behind 3 passwords, 2 keys, and a laser grid, this is not for immediate use in the event of an emergency. It's there for target practice, it's there for collector value, it's there for 100 other purposes, but it's not there for immediate use. So, don't keep it loaded. It's that easy. If I have it in a biometric safe where I just put my thumb on it and it pops the door open and it's ready immediately, that is there for immediate use, and so therefore I would keep it loaded in that case. Your home, your situation, your living arrangement will determine exactly where you store the gun and in what method that makes sense. You do want to store, in general purpose, you want to store your guns in one location locked and your ammo in another location locked. Now, that seems a little odd, but the idea is, let's say you have kids, and let's say you didn't hide the key quite as well as you thought you did. So they've got the key to your gun safe. So they walk over and they think it's really cool. You said don't touch them, which made them a sacred object, so they have to be touched. And they open it up and they're playing with these things. Now you're really glad that you didn't store them loaded. And they also probably don't have access to the ammo because you wouldn't keep it on the same key ring. That'd be silly. Or they find the other key, they have ammo, ammo's not terribly interesting, so they're going to leave it alone. The other idea is if someone breaks into your home and they get to that room first, they popped in that window. Let's say they break the lock on your ammo. Okay, they've got ammo. They would have had to have brought a firearm. Or they break in and they get the firearm, at least they won't be able to shoot you with it. That's the idea, that they won't be able to use your tool against you. Okay? So that's why you want them separate and locked. An easy way to do this, switch the doorknob on a closet to where it's got a lock on the inside, and there you go, put your ammo in there. Just trying to make sure it's not like a bathroom closet or touching a bathroom, because then the moisture can become a problem and corrode your ammunition. Any other questions? Did you see on Facebook? Did you see any questions?
No.
If any of the people watching right now do have a question, go ahead and submit it now. We'll wait just for a little bit. Richard is over here watching the stream, and then he'll give voice to your questions. Okay? As we move on, while I wait for that to kind of fill in the dead space, let's talk about targets. When you go to a range and you're practicing with your firearm, I mentioned that the perfect shot group is a circle. Now, when I say that, that doesn't mean a circle this big or a circle this big or a circle this big. It's all situational. If I'm shooting at 15 feet away with a standard 9mm pistol, I want a fairly tight circle. You know, I personally, if you're talking about effectiveness of training, a circle like this doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you what you're doing right. It doesn't tell you what you're doing wrong. So you're ineffectively training. Move the target back. Or speed up your shooting a little bit. If you're going at just a normal stately pow, 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 just speed it up a little bit to where it's more pow, 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 and just try to add just another degree of speed to that until you've mastered how fast you are trying to shoot at that distance. Once you've mastered that, scoot the target back 5 feet, start over at your original speed, speed up, move the target back, speed up, move the target back, and go back from there. That's effective training on a pistol. I like to tell people that because when they get to the range, they're kind of lost. Start at an easy distance, 10 feet. Start with a big target. Try to get one of those big, it's called a B-27E. That's a regulation-sized FBI-style target. Get one of those guys to where it's hard to miss, especially at 10 feet, and just see what happens. Get over your fear of recoil and the report of the fire going off. Just get used to handling it. Now, if you do have any other further questions that have not been answered here today, you can always go to the trading post. We'll answer any questions you have. Don't forget, one of your best resources is YouTube. You will find 150,000 videos that disagree with almost everything I just said, and you'll find 150,000 that do agree with everything I just said. You find the method and the training that works in your situation. I tell people all the time, because they ask me like, well, what if I try to shoot it this way with my hand like this? You can train for almost anything. You can train how to be effective in a lot of situations. The question is, one, is that an effective training? Will you ever need to practice shooting a firearm with your left foot while doing a handstand over a stairway? Probably not. Of course, if that situation ever did arise, you'd be glad for the training. So find what works for you in your situation. Ask an experienced, knowledgeable gun person, not an opinionated one. You'll find plenty of those. Ask an experienced, knowledgeable gun guy or girl, what do they think? What are their suggestions? At the Trading Post, we always try to get you a firearm that fits you less than it fits us. We try to keep personal opinion out of it and just try to set you up with the best equipment we can. We'll steer you right when it comes to ammunition. I wish I did have time to talk about ammunition. I don't today. But we'll steer you right on that and try to give you a breakdown of what that means. Alrighty? Thank you so much for joining me today. From the entire Trading Post team, stay safe out there, and hopefully we'll get back to doing business as normal here soon.